Adolf Hitler was born in 1889 in a small town in Austria. His childhood was spent under the shadow of a strict father who wanted him to become a government official, but Hitler's dreams were tied to painting and the arts. In his youth, he moved to Vienna where he twice attempted to enter the art academy, but faced failure both times. This failure forced him to live on the streets and survive by painting small postcards, where bitterness toward society and anti-Semitic ideologies began to take root in his heart. When World War I broke out in 1914, Hitler saw it as a means to find purpose in his life and joined the German army. He proved to be a fearless soldier and received high honors for bravery, but the defeat of Germany at the end of the war shook him. He was convinced that politicians and internal enemies had stabbed Germany in the back. This fire of anger and revenge pushed him toward politics. He joined a small political party and, through the power of his magical oratory, soon became its leader, known to the world as the Nazi Party. In 1923, he made a failed attempt to overthrow the government, for which he was sent to prison. In the solitude of prison, he wrote his book Mein Kampf, My Struggle, which was essentially a roadmap of his future horrific intentions. After his release, he utilized the democratic system and took advantage of Germany's economic downfall to show the public a dream of prosperity and national pride. In 1933, he became the Chancellor of Germany, and upon taking power, he revoked all democratic rights and declared himself the absolute dictator of the country. After coming to power, he reorganized Germany's military strength and laid the foundation for the worst massacre in human history, the Holocaust, in which millions of innocent people were put to death in gas chambers and agonizing camps. His invasion of Poland in 1939 marked the beginning of World War II, which engulfed the entire world. Initially, he achieved great victories, but the mistake of invading Russia and America's entry into the war turned the tide. In the final days of the war, as Allied forces surrounded Berlin, Hitler took refuge in an underground bunker. On April 30, 1945, when defeat was clearly written on the wall, he committed suicide along with his new wife, Eva Braun. With his death, the Nazi era came to an end, but he left behind a devastated world and historical wounds that remain a lesson for humanity today. Among Adolf Hitler's most trusted and famous generals, the name of Erwin Rommel is the most prominent, known to the world as the Desert Fox. The main reason for his fame was the North African campaign where, despite having a very small army, he made the British forces dance to his tunes with his astonishing military strategy. Rommel's distinction was that he was a professional soldier, and even his enemies respected his bravery and military ethics. However, his end with Hitler was very tragic. When Hitler suspected Rommel was involved in a plot to assassinate him, he gave Rommel the option to either commit suicide by taking poison or face a humiliating trial in court. Rommel took the poison to save his family. On the other hand, if we talk about the most famous and decisive battle of the Nazi era, it was the Battle of Stalingrad. This was one of the bloodiest battles in human history, fought between Germany and the Soviet Union from 1942 to 1943. Hitler wanted to conquer this city at any cost because it was a major industrial center for Russia. The German army entered the city, but the Russians put up such resistance in every street and house that the war dragged on for months. When the severe Russian winter began, the German soldiers had neither proper clothing nor food. The war ended when German General Paulus surrendered to the Russians against Hitler's orders. This single battle shattered the myth of Hitler's invincibility, and from here began the series of Nazi Germany's retreats that ended with the destruction of Berlin. In this battle, a total of approximately 2 million soldiers and civilians on both sides were killed or injured. Joseph Goebbels was Hitler's most loyal companion and the mastermind of Nazi propaganda. He believed that if a lie is told 100 times, people begin to believe it as the truth. When circumstances turned against Germany in World War II and they faced a humiliating defeat like Stalingrad, Goebbels adopted several terrifying methods to blind the public through propaganda. Instead of admitting defeat to the German people, he presented it as a great sacrifice. Through radio and newspapers, he gave the impression that the German army had not lost but was following a strategy that would eventually completely annihilate the enemy. He delivered emotional speeches on the radio calling for total war from the public, meaning not just the army, but the elderly, children, and women would also be thrown into the fire. Goebbels used fear as a weapon. He frightened the public that if they lost the war, the Russian armies would come and destroy their generations and erase the name of Germany. Because of this fear, ordinary German citizens stood by Hitler until the very end despite hunger and bombing. Even when Russian troops had entered Berlin, Goebbels' propaganda kept convincing people that Hitler had a secret weapon that would destroy the enemy in the blink of an eye. When Hitler committed suicide, Goebbels also took his loyalty to the extreme. He and his wife killed their 6 children with poison and then ended their own lives. He did not want to live in a world without Hitler where the Nazi ideology did not exist. In this way, the propaganda machinery that had pushed millions of people into the mouth of death fell silent upon the death of its own creator. Hitler's secret weapons, referred to in Nazi propaganda as V-weapons or vengeance weapons, were far ahead of the technology of that time. Hitler was convinced that these inventions would turn the tide of the war in the final moments. The most terrifying among them was the V-2 rocket, which was the world's first long-range ballistic missile. It was so fast that no defense system of that time could stop it in the air, and it would silently fall and turn any city into a pile of rubble. Additionally, the Nazis developed the world's first jet-engine fighter plane, the Messerschmitt Me 262, which was much faster than the ordinary planes of the Allied countries. Not only this, German scientists were very close to building the world's first atomic bomb, and they were making long-range cannons that could shell London from the coast of France. Hitler's engineers were also working on aircraft with strange designs like the flying wing, which resemble modern stealth bomber planes today. But it was too late to bring these weapons to the battlefield. Germany was running out of fuel and raw materials, and continuous bombing by Allied forces had destroyed their factories. These weapons were masterpieces in technical terms, but they could not save Hitler from defeat. After the war, a race began between America and Russia to capture these Nazi scientists, and this same German technology later became the foundation for man reaching the moon and modern missile systems. When World War II ended, America and the Soviet Union realized that despite Nazi Germany's defeat, their scientists had created technology that no one else in the world possessed. That is why a secret war to steal these mines began between the two powers, which was named Operation Paperclip in America. American intelligence agencies prepared lists of German scientists, engineers, and technicians, including more than 1,600 individuals. Many of them were active members of the Nazi Party and were indirectly involved in war crimes for Hitler, but America ignored their past because they wanted to use their expertise against Russia. The most important name among them was Wernher von Braun. This was the man who had created the devastating V-2 rocket for Hitler. He was brought to America, where he played a key role in founding the American Space Agency, NASA. You will be surprised to know that the Saturn V rocket, which took man to the moon for the first time, was actually designed by this former Nazi scientist. On the other hand, the Soviet Union also captured hundreds of German experts and moved them to Russia to strengthen their rocket and nuclear programs. In this way, the scientists who were once making weapons to destroy the world for Hitler later became the founders of the space race and modern missile technology during the Cold War. This chapter of history remains controversial today because many people question whether these people should have been punished for their past or if it was right to forgive them because of their scientific services. When World War II ended and the horrific crimes of the Nazis came before the world, the Allied countries decided that just winning the war was not enough, it was also necessary to bring these criminals to justice. For this purpose, a historic court was set up in the German city of Nuremberg, known as the Nuremberg Trials. This was the first time that high officials of a country were tried in an international court for crimes against humanity and war crimes. Great leaders of the Nazi Party appeared before the court, except for Hitler, Goebbels, and Himmler, as they had already committed suicide. The biggest name in these trials was Hermann Göring, who was the most powerful man in Nazi Germany after Hitler and the head of the Air Force. During the trial, he brazenly defended his actions, but when he was sentenced to death, he committed suicide by taking poison hidden in his cell just hours before he was to be taken to the gallows. In these trials, a total of 24 major Nazi leaders were tried, of whom 12 were sentenced to death and the rest were given life imprisonment or long-term sentences.